What does it mean to be called crazy in a crazy world? Listen to Madness Radio. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited. You know, there was so much work that has gone into this event. I'm so grateful to all the volunteers that have put this thing together. I just want to give a round of applause to all the volunteers. And I am completely unprepared for this event. I have prepared absolutely nothing because I've been spending all my time for the past 3 years working on this thing. So, which is done, which I'm very excited about. And a lot of the people who are in the book are in this room. And I was thinking, what am I going to say? How could I open this up? What would be the way to begin this? And I didn't come up with anything. But what I want to say is that I think the greatest privilege in life is to be able to serve something that's meaningful and that's beyond your own limited individual self. And the contributors and the people who've been part of this book and who've been part of the MAD movement have really given me that privilege to be able to do something meaningful, and I feel very appreciative to be here. So thank you to all the contributors for this book. So I am really, actually I would just like to go hide upstairs right now. And you guys have your party and your event, the books, and I'm just really nervous. This has been, when I started the Kickstarter 3 years ago to make this happen, I thought, okay, a book, a year, that's a good budget to make it. No, it's like, it took a lot of time. Really, this was a big design challenge, and I think the idea was that, if you open it up and take a look, you get these full quotes, and that's because we live, as you may have noticed, in a computerized, high-tech world where no one actually reads books. So here I am creating a book that people probably aren't really going to read, which is actually true, because when I used to work at a bookstore. I worked at Broadside Bookshop in Northampton, and we have read some industry research that about 60% of all the books that are sold aren't actually read, which is true. So we realized we're actually not a bookstore, we're actually a home furnishing store. So the idea with this was that this is a book that you can actually scroll through as if it was like a website. And it really, for me, it was a challenge to get the voices forward, the specific messages encapsulated in very succinct ways. Alex was incredibly helpful, and I'm really indebted to him, and I think we all are. So I'm glad that he was able to sort of join us tonight. And I want to start and bring the very first person up, one of the contributors who really helped get all of this started, actually before Madness Radio was Madness Radio, getting started with the Freedom Center, which was an activism and support group that we started in Western Massachusetts. I want to invite Oryx Cohen up and to say just a few words. Can you hear us, Oryx? Can you hear us?
I am not a hologram, I don't think. I got up at 2:30 your time this morning, so I may be a hologram. I'm not quite sure. So, thank you.
I'm going to be your tech support. You go, Oryx.
It is awesome to be here, really. It's just incredible to see how many people came out for this. Yeah, this is awesome. So, a few years ago, Will flew out from Costa Rica when I was having a hard time, just to help me out. And so when I heard he was doing this event, I was like, I'm there, no matter what it takes. And so, like I said, I'm just really happy to be here. And
obviously, it would have been hard to have you on Skype, I think. Yeah,
yes,
glad you're here, yeah.
Definitely. And just to see so many people that are in this movement and that I work with and that I really love, and I'm sure this is just the start of an awesome night. It's just awesome. So I want to really thank Will for being a amazing friend, and for introducing me to the power of radio. You know, he started this whole Madness Radio thing in Northampton, Massachusetts, and we used to actually go into the studio and record it live, and that was quite an experience to learn all about how everything works and whatnot. And now, of course, you can do radio from wherever. Doesn't matter, but that was really cool. So thank you. And just to see over the years how many people have listened to the shows. And I hear lots of people get introduced to this movement through Madness Radio. And that's really, really cool. Will said that I could make a plug, so I'm going to, a short plug, very short. Okay, the plug is that I co-produced a film called Healing Voices. It's going to be released on April 29th. It's a feature-length documentary on all these issues. And the reason that we made the film is because we feel like a lot of the stuff that we talk about doesn't get out to kind of mainstream America. So we attempted to make a film that could do that. And we think we did it. And it's being, we just heard that we got accepted into the Boston International Film Festival. So our world premiere will be April 16th. And we're asking that people join us for a grassroots release on or around April 29th. So if you're not already a part of a screening, consider being a part of a screening. This is really more than, we want it to be a lot more than a film. We want this to spark and to support this movement. So that's the plug, that's short.
You asked me to stand up.
So he wanted me to say also something very brief about vision of madness. And so my vision of madness is that the experience of madness or altered states is deeply respected and listened to. That we realize that these states come from all variety of sources, spiritual, trauma, all kinds of things. And I'll give you one example of a very common thread that people have when they're in an altered state, which is, I'm going to save the world, right? We've heard in different ways. Right? I've been there. Lots of people have seen, you can relate. Well, we live in a society that says there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with you. Why, you know, you're sick. You're mentally ill. Well, look around. Maybe we have a world that needs saving. Maybe we ought to listen to folks.
Thank you so much. Yes, and after, thank you, okay, great. And now, the next person I want to introduce is someone who I have worked with after I was at Broadside Bookshop and I started to get established with Freedom Center and doing activism and support group work. I learned about this incredible vision that came from intergalactic reality of the Icarus Project. And I was like, wow, here's somebody who's actually asking me to bring it up 5 notches. I want to meet those people. And I met Jax and Sasha, and it's an incredible honor to have both of them as part of the book. Really, really, I think that's the greatest kind of friendship, is someone who really challenges you to be even more creative and take more risks and even put yourself out there even more, and I'm very, very deeply indebted to the Icarus Project for that. So I want to invite Jax McNamara up. So Jax.
Amazing to see all of you here. So I'm going to share a poem from my book, In Between Lands. I did an interview with Will for this, that's in this book, when this book came out. So I got into mental health land by being diagnosed bipolar when I was 19 and told that all of my mental health issues were because of my, biological brain disease. And as I went through my 20s and my 30s and learned that things were a lot more complicated, it became clear to me how much trauma and gender and sexuality and all kinds of things were interwoven into why I had such an interesting experience of reality. And the poem that I'm going to read is the title poem of this book. And it's kind of intense, but it's about moving through a process of healing and recovering memories and finding my way back into my body and into being a much more whole human being. So, In Between Land. I wish someone had told me I would get out of the burning house, or that I had already escaped a long time ago and it lived on only in my muscles and my mind. I wish someone had handed me the word survivor, placed it in my palm like a blossom or a drill, told me to build altars or hang hinges carefully. I wish they had told me that I could stand up, open the door anytime, and leave. It's 1986. I'm lying on my back in a hot room. My father blocks the door and tells me fairy tales with cruel endings. Goldilocks shut in a closet and forced to eat beetles by her parents after she gets lost in the woods. He leans over to kiss me on the lips where I don't want to be kissed. Wishes me good night again. It's 2006. I'm lying on my back in a room with red velvet curtains, the walls covered in fairies and pelts. I'm lying on the table of a psychic named Sue, whose hands know things I can't explain. She touches my shoulders and asks where I am. In space. Asteroids, comets, a large silence of almost nothing. You're that far away? No wonder I can't find you. My eyes are closed. I cannot tell if I am sinking or floating. You haven't chosen to stay on this earth yet, have you? No. 26 years and counting. I wish someone had told us that the years spent journeying back and forth across In-Between Land would not be a waste, that the miles and the blizzards could not be avoided, that we would find the necessary roads, the necessary words, the mystery between them all. I wish they had told us about earthquakes, that we were not crazy, that sometimes the unspeakable erupts out of the fault lines in your spine, that the body stops shaking eventually, the ground stops buckling despite aftershocks, despite fire eventually. Something settles. Water turns clear, birds come back in the morning, you choose earth. Make breakfast and go on. My best friend and I, right there, used to talk about choosing earth and sky. We traveled borders, leading workshops for survivors who had known rocks that whisper, billboards that shout conspiracies and cosmic truths, electric hearts impaled on apocalypse sunsets over ruined cities and paper mountains, speaking myths that evaporate like water off hot pavement when you finally come down. Down into that world of toothpaste and toilet paper, fathers and sons, appointments, diagnoses, mania, psychoses, but we knew. We were caught trying to fly out of those mazes built by kings and corporations, where your wings melt when you finally make it out over the sea. When we would mention keeping one foot in both worlds, everyone in the room would exhale. Their eyes like fireflies switching on at dusk. Permission. This too is real. In-Between Land. Both our own maps. You don't have to choose between your sanity and the roofless night. It's 2012 and I am lying on the floor of a small room where a therapist in a black muscle tee, emblazoned with the word hope in big white letters, draws infinity symbols above my eyes. I follow her fingers and I freeze, as usual, until the images come back, the shadow shapes of men, my father leaning over, thick waves, heat, suddenly the impulse to roll onto my side, stand up, open the door and leave. For the first time, I do. Outside, the world is big as snow, bright as a waxing moon, full of people. My hands are full of tools. My eyes are full of horizon. I have become enormous, a child, finally landing in an adult's miraculous skin. If anyone wants a copy, there's some copies for sale on the table out there. And I just want to give you a hug.
Thank you, Dad.
This is an amazing human being
thank
right here. Quality human being.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So a couple of things. Why don't we try and invite people to come in and make some space?
Yeah. If people on the floor can think about moving towards
Yeah,
the
maybe
stage
move.
area a little bit.
And also maybe it's kind of getting a little bit hot in here, so Keith, could you open the door? Maybe we can get a little bit of air. Yeah, some air would be great. +1 on the air. Isn't that what they say, +1? Okay. There is a lot going on in the Bay Area related to all this, and one of the people who has inspired me and helped make the book possible, helped make this event possible, and has been just completely spreading and growing and doing keynotes, and recently won Peer Specialist of the Year and has got an incredible interview in Madness Radio, and now she's very shy and embarrassed because she knows I'm going to invite her up here. Dina Tyler, come on up.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you so much to Will. I mean, he asked me a few years ago to be interviewed for Madness Radio, and I was like, okay. And then I canceled it like 3 times because I hadn't shared my story publicly, and it was really hard to be like putting it out there when I had kept a very low online profile and nobody knows anything about me, and so being able to like share it in somewhere. But it gave me that like chance to like that opportunity to like become more comfortable with having my story out there, and it's just been so wonderful. And like so I've been sharing more and more about what I went through, and so I just want to thank you so much for that. And so I decided, Will said I could do anything that I want up here. So I thought I would share some of my journal. So this is the journal that I started to keep on the first day when I started partial hospitalization.
Yeah, Dina didn't get a time limit. Just
Read the whole thing.
And then it kind of ends on the day that I entered inpatient. So this is like the 6 months leading up. So I just wanted to read some excerpts from it. This is hopefully the first page of a long dedication to writing down my thoughts and feelings in this journal. I guess it is a time for starting over and retraining myself to do all the self-help things that I have been told are helpful all throughout life, but yet have never taken the time to do. The end result, hopefully being a little less screwed up. It is weird to be going through so much self-awareness since I have started partial hospitalization. I had a big thing with reality today. I think that the Zyprexa is starting to work, because I felt a little different today, but only in spurts. I started realizing that the people and surroundings around me are actually real, that everything does exist and that I exist too. Today I came into an understanding about the voices inside my head. I found out that they are supposed to be not normal. I hear what seems like cafe chatter inside my head, and I remember now the old woman who used to yell at me as a kid. Hey, it seems like whenever the voices are actually speaking to me, they are speaking over a loudspeaker or an echoed voice, and they're usually yelling at me. Also, I remember when I took Wellbutrin, the voices became much louder inside my head. So I guess that this is probably something that does need to be addressed. Hopefully the Zyprexa will help. But I really don't want it to take away my abilities. I want to be able to control my connection with reality in the spirit world. I began to accept tonight that I know things from past lives that others have forgotten or ignored. Like I asked my mom tonight if she knew what it felt like to die. And I feel like it's like a snap. Someone like turning out the light on your life. And then you just go become a soul and you go back into that black spirit world where you can imagine and see and create whatever you want to see. But my mom said that she doesn't know what it feels like to die. I also asked if she just knows things, because I know things that I have not experienced either in this physical life yet. And I know feelings that I have not experienced either. So I think schizophrenia and all of this voices and deja vu and delusions and stuff is really just being in touch with your spirit and soul and this universe, and maybe not so in touch with mortal reality. But it is so weird when you thought you were normal your entire life, and the voices inside my head are said to be abnormal. I ask other people about voices, and many people don't hear this kind of stuff. I also talked with my sister's ex-boyfriend yesterday, and he said that I sounded like I was going through a mania episode when I was figuring out all this stuff in my head about spirituality and the universe and stuff. I guess that they would refer to these kinds of things as delusions of grandeur. I really do think that I figured stuff out finally. I really do think that the insane know more truth about the universe than most normal people or doctors. I don't know if I'm a chosen one to know this kind of stuff, but I just think I'm more aware, and that I'm a very old soul. And I think other insane people are old souls and can just remember better than others. But I think that the Zyprexa will help me to be able to focus my attention more so on the present instead. That will be good. However, I am scared that the ability to have insight and foresight may be at risk with this medication. I need this instinct in order to feel my purpose in life of helping other lost souls. So what I want is a good balance, or the ability to do both, or understand both well. Living too much inside my head is having consequences, and so would only living in the present physical world. I know that I'm here on this earth to help guide people and help spirits realize their potential. I have been dead to the world for too long. I want to be content with my mind, body, and spirit. I want to understand my feelings and know what I am feeling. I want to feel pain for myself. I want to feel sadness when I feel it. I can't ask for Band-Aids anymore. I don't want them. I want to feel emotions for myself. I want to think my own reality and understand the confusion. I don't want to be a chalkboard anymore. I am me. I want to tell my parents that they just need to listen to me. I don't want answers. I don't want solutions. I just want to come to my own decisions with my own intuition, and that they just need to trust that I won't crumble. But even if I do crumble, they need to understand that I will hurt sometimes, but I won't die. I will die if I keep going down the same path I was headed. I still could die if I don't start living. It may not be a physical death, but it is still death. For the Bay Area Mandala Project, we have some little handouts out there on the table for free, so it's a whole vision of trying to help people going through these experiences in a new way.
Fantastic, thank you. I love how those fit together so beautifully. I didn't expect that. It was really wonderful. Do we have another Skype possibility, or is that is like rolling the dice, nodding the heads?
We have Adi.
How are people feeling connected to the luck of the draw of Skype? Can we try another Skype real quick?
Sure.
Okay, I want to introduce, I have had the incredible privilege of being invited to many, many different countries, and to get a chance to speak and to teach and do workshops, and also to learn what are the commonalities and what are the differences of mental health issues internationally. When I arrived in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in Sarajevo, and met Adi Hasanbasik, I was encountering a kindred soul in Sarajevo, and very, very inspiring person. I was extremely touched by the group that he started, and so hopefully we have Adi Hasanbasik. Now we have a little bit of a...
It's dialing. We had him on.
Okay, let's try and get him.
Oh, yep.
Okay,
Yes,
there we go. Okay,
There he is.
so let's, I want to welcome Adi Hasanbasik. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay. Hey, man, can you hear us?
Greetings from Sarajevo from AM.
Can you hear us? Yeah, yes, we can hear you. People can hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said greetings from Sarajevo from the AM because here is 5 AM.
A dedicated activist. Dedicated.
Yeah. Nice to see many people on your book launch.
So we are. It's very unplanned. Do you want to share a little bit, just like three or 4 minutes on anything at all? We're really excited to have you. Unscripted, live reality.
Excited to have you. I think that this also proves how excited I am at 5:30 AM. Yeah, I'm very excited to be a part of this book and this project and to be part of your life. If you will, in general, that your great endeavor is coming in form of the book so that many people can read and meet you via book and via written word. I have pleasure and experience of meeting you as a colleague and a friend in these last 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we will meet again this year here again. So I'm very excited really to be a part of this project.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Adi. All right. What's that? What's that?
I said pleasant evening and don't drink too much.
Thanks a lot. Don't drink too much. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Wow, it's so nice when you can kind of do that again and it doesn't repeat. It actually works the second time. So great. Thanks for trusting that. This vision is awakening globally and internationally, and it's very exciting and very inspiring to see how the internet makes it possible and how people are coming here. We have Karen from Belgium is with us tonight. We have people from all over the world who are watching on the internet tonight. One of the people who has been sharing and spreading the vision of Icarus and the vision of radical mental health worldwide is my dear longtime friend who I want to introduce right now, Sasha de Brule. So thank you, Sasha.
So I was thinking about when, a little more than 10 years ago, me and Will and Jax and Madigan, we were in New York City, and it was the middle of summer. It was really hot, and I was kind of going through, I mean, clinically they'd probably call it like a manic episode, but it was just kind of, I was just particularly exuberant. And it was the week that we actually formally became a collective, like the Icarus Project Collective. And it was also at a time when Will kind of came on board with us, and he brought all these tools and ideas, and one of them was this idea of advanced directives, or it was the ideas of Mary Ellen Copeland, wellness recovery action plans, which the basic idea is that you write down the things that you need in the event that you can't make decisions for yourself, or in the event that you're like not in the space to know what you need. And we really took it and we ran with it. We took it in all these different directions. We went on the Icarus Project forums, and people all over the world were kind of exploring this idea of creating these what we ended up calling mad maps. And for me, it was like a really great project for me, personally, because I got to think a lot about, okay, how do I know when I'm well? How do I know when I'm really, really well? And for me, one of the key ways that I know that I'm well is that I feel connected to something much larger than myself, that I have a part in. I feel connected to something that's like not just something out there, you know, that I'm like tapping into, but that I'm actively engaged in. And within a couple minutes of getting here tonight and kind of walking around, I felt that feeling kind of rise up in me. I was like, well, I know like half the people here, we've known each other for a really long time. And we're not just people who are kind of going about our business, we're part of a movement. And we're part of a movement that's growing. And I feel so honored to be here and just to be like a voice among many to remind you that we are part of something really beautiful that's important now, but that's going to continue to be important, and that the voices that are around now are laying the foundation for, like, once we're not even here anymore, like whoever hears next and picks it up. So the last thing I'll say is that right now I live in New York City, and I work at this place called the Parachute Program. I work on a mobile treatment team, and I have this amazing, I'm a social work, I'm about to finish social work school. So after 12 years of running the Icarus Project, I left, and now I'm like working as a clinician.
The dark side.
I'm definitely on the edge of the dark side. But one of the things that's amazing about where I work, so there's like a crew of us that are working together, and it's a mix of clinicians and people who are peers. So the clinicians have all gone to school to get degrees. The peers, they're experts by experience. They're people who have somehow ended up in the system themselves and are now working. But we use this, the thing I wanted to say is that the place where I work is really informed by this philosophy of open dialogue. Maybe some of you have heard of it. But one of the ideas of open dialogue is this project. It started in Finland, in Northern Europe, and it turned out by doing this model of family therapy, they really decreased the rates of schizophrenia diagnoses. And so it's like coming into the mental health system now, and they're trying it. But one of the ideas is this idea of polyphony, the idea of many voices all coexisting in the same space. And when I think about Madness Radio, and when I think about like the amazing diversity of voices that Will has managed to gather together, it's like we're doing something to heal the culture. That's like what we're doing, healing work. We're building a movement that's not just fighting for political change, but we're actively healing the culture and creating lots of different ways of doing things and being able to exist in this world and be, special. So that's all I gotta say. I love you all. Oh, wait. I have also, like Jack's, right next to Jax's book over there, there's like a book I wrote too. It's all right. You should get a copy.
That's awesome.
Okay, I really thought about what I was going to say about myself in this event, what I was going to share about my own experience, and how I was going to present what part of my own story, and then I came across an essay written by, is it okay? Well, people are going to find out. We used to date each other, so my ex basically wrote about me in a book, and I was like, what? And she emails me and says, hey, Will, I just take a look at this. Is it okay that I'm doing this? And anyway, it's incredibly powerful to see yourself so honestly through someone else's eyes, and I'm very, very delighted to invite Susie Meserve up to read for you. So welcome, Susie.
Hi there. Will, thank you so much for having me. I think you're a brave man. And I'm really honored to be a part of this. Obviously, everyone needs to buy Will's book. I am going to PayPal him later for my copy. But I did just want to make a small plug, which is the essay that I'm going to read is coming out in a anthology called Show Me All Your Scars, True Stories of Overcoming Mental Illness. And there's
We
a
have-
flyer out on the
We
table.
have shopping
Check it out.
bags for all the books you're going to buy.
The book's not out yet, but you might want to add it to your list. So, and there's some information on the table about that. So yeah, I've known Will for 16 years, I realized, and which I guess predates a lot of this work that he has done, which is cool. And he's been a great supporter of mine and my writing. And he said something about friendship and how your friends push you to be more creative. And I would just say that Will constantly has pushed me, sometimes against my will, to be both more creative and I think more critical of the world and myself in a good way. So you might want to settle in. This is going to take about 15 minutes to read it, so I hope you find it interesting. I met Will in the summer of 1999 in Northampton, Massachusetts, when we both worked at Thorne's Marketplace, a 3-story building full of trendy shops and eateries in the center of town. I was in graduate school for creative writing and had applied for a job at the health food store as a summer gig. I worked with Smith College students and locals who needed the 40% discount on their macrobiotic food. I myself was in the midst of a war with an unnamed eating disorder I thought of only as control. Earlier in the year, I had been bulimic, but by summertime, I had moved on to severely limiting fats and running 5 miles a day. I hadn't had a period or much of a sex drive in over a year. The doctor said I had the estrogen level of a pre-adolescent girl. But Will, shelving novels at the bookstore when I descended the stairs of Thorns, inspired in me the faintest sexual stirring. He had long hair and a face that seemed world-weary and more than a little mysterious. Will came into the health food store while I worked the register one afternoon. He put some vitamins down on the conveyor belt and I nearly lost my nerve. Then I blurted, "You look like Elliot Smith." "I do? Cool," he said, pleased and clearly a little flustered. I spent the next week trying to catch his eye. There was a back way into Thorns, but I'd take the front entrance, so I had an excuse to smile at Will as I made my way down the stairs. He bought a lot of vitamins that week. I decided there was a book I just had to have. Finally, we made a date. I can't remember who asked whom. I suggested a cocktail, but Will said he didn't drink. This was my first sign that he was not entirely like me. No one I knew didn't drink. My friends and I took ample advantage of the free wine at poetry readings and showed up regularly to Thursday nights at the smoky VFW bar. Will suggested dinner, but I didn't want to eat on a first date. Finally, we agreed on tea. He told me that first night that he really shouldn't be dating. "I'm a diagnosed schizophrenic," he said, and without pausing to gauge my reaction, asked, "Does that worry you? Does it worry you?" Of course it worried me. It shocked me. I had no context for that kind of revelation. Schizophrenia was completely beyond the realm of my experience. I had only recently become acquainted with my own mental illness, something my therapist and I tentatively called anxiety, though she admitted that on the form she would submit to my insurance, she had to write anxiety followed by disorder. I was still processing the idea that the machinations I'd put myself through since I was 7, the hand washing, the number games I played with the clock, were not exactly normal. "A little," I said, "yeah." I didn't know what else to say. I considered ending the date. Mostly I felt disappointed, but I walked with him to his place on the outskirts of town. He lived in an efficiency apartment, 1 room with no kitchen and old carpet. You could hear other tenants through the walls. Will told me he'd flunked out of a master's program the year before because he'd had a major psychotic break. He'd been hearing voices, suffering from paranoia, and having horrible visions. His fear, he said, was out of control. Eventually, he ended up in a private mental health facility where they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. After 6 months, because he was in conflict with the program director and sure they would never make him well, he checked himself out. He'd briefly been homeless. He staunchly refused to be medicated. He had moved to Northampton to try to put his life back together. He was on disability and welfare. I sensed that my reaction to Will's revelation was a kind of test I did not know how to pass. It was clear the date was over. He walked me back to the well-lit part of town. We said goodbye, and I strode the sad and confused walk up Main Street to my bright, spacious apartment alone. I come from an East Coast family that's politically liberal and reasonably open-minded, but my parents might have freaked out if they'd known I was consorting with a schizophrenic. Part of Will's appeal, in fact, because I realized later that night that I was still intrigued by him despite everything he told me and that I would see him again, was that my parents would be terrified. In therapy, I was working on separating from my parents, establishing boundaries, learning that it would not betray my love for them if I trusted myself. So the possibility of dating Will immediately represented something risky, something almost out of bounds. That alone, of course, did not prompt me to say yes to a second date. When I waved to him on my way down the stairs the next day, a grin effortlessly presented itself across my face, and there was that faint stirring between my legs. Will called me the next afternoon. "Do you want to go for a trail run?" he asked. I always wanted to go for a run, though I wondered briefly if being alone in the woods with a schizophrenic I didn't know very well was such a good idea. Besides, it looked stormy and I was not good with spontaneous plans. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. After a run in the hills behind Northampton in a thunderstorm, the two of us jostling one another playfully, panting, laughing, mud-splattered, soaked through, we showered separately and then met back at my apartment, where on the floor of my living room, Will peeled off my jeans and put his mouth on me. The ceiling above seemed to twinkle with celestial bodies smiling down, and afterwards, I felt tired, relaxed, hungry, and surprised. I could be inhibited about sex, but perhaps because I knew the biggest thing about Will already, and everything of mine paled in comparison, or so I thought. I felt absolutely no reason to withhold that deepest part of myself. I found myself shockingly willing to just let go. Very few areas in my life permitted me this kind of ease, certainly not my work, which a teacher had recently told me was too perfect, and thus, he said, not very interesting. Not my eating, nor my exercising. In those arenas, I could not relax the reins even a little bit. That I might find freedom in this unlikely, mentally ill man simply because he had no expectations of me and I had none of him, well, that was something. But Will had no desire to be my boyfriend, nor the skills to be in a serious relationship with anyone, and his vast differences from me soon felt like a liability. I didn't want to tell my mom about him, didn't know how he would behave in social settings, at poetry readings, at a bar. One night he told me he didn't think we should date anymore, but that he still wanted to hang out with me, and I felt relief more than anger or sadness. I had always treated relationships the way I treated exercise or writing or food, with compulsion. I'd check my email every 5 minutes to see if someone had written. I'd overthink every glance in the teaching lounge. With Will, it felt like being with him or not was my choice, and it was an easy decision to just be friends. My friend did not seem like the stereotype of schizophrenic that I knew from movies and television. He did not hear voices anymore, at least as far as I could tell, and he was never violent. He was obviously depressed, though, depressed in a way that suggested sadness from some place far beyond the present. Sometimes he became slightly manic, and he frequently became confused. Once when we talked, I wondered if we were having two separate conversations. He might, for instance, lapse into sullenness, into silence, as though he'd forgotten I was there. Then, all of a sudden, he'd brightly ask a question only tenuously related to what we'd been talking about. Some days his veneer seemed so thin he was almost translucent, like the smallest insult or hurt would break him. When he was up, Will was quick-witted. He could be hysterically funny. He was obviously smart. His decision to live an unmedicated life meant he took a barrage of supplements and carved away several hours a day for yoga, meditation, and acupuncture. His diet was so restricted, it made mine seem hedonistic. He didn't eat gluten, soy, eggs, corn, sugar, meat, or caffeine. Going out to dinner with Will was like a complicated three-act play. And he could be pedantic, overly direct, critical. "You haven't read Lathe of Heaven? Seriously?" I can't believe you listen to NPR, corporate media. I accepted his bluntness with hesitation. Many times I wondered if our friendship was worth it. The bad moods, the sudden decisions that our evening was over, the weird outbursts of criticism. But at other times, Will behaved like an endearing child, entirely genuine. Unlike most of the guys I knew, he did not resort to ironic retorts or mannered responses. He had the laugh of a 10-year-old, the sweet, bubbling peal. One day, he invited me over to play a rented video game. It was a Saturday, and I had planned to spend the day relaxing after a week run like boot camp. Exercise, teach, fast, write. So I said yes. Will couldn't handle any violence, and the game was a lush but G-rated fantasy, something about a princess who needed to travel through a maze to reach a castle. We played it on his aging thrift store television for hours. I remember the days that we spent it happily, goofily stoned, but we couldn't have been. Will didn't put any substances into his body besides chromium picolinate and copious amounts of vitamin C. But being with him sometimes felt like an altered state. And after we'd played the video game, we pushed aside the controls and had sex on his bed. We had this implicit understanding that we would still have sex. Not always. Months went by when we were simply platonic friends, but then we'd fall into bed together again. I welcomed this. I had no compunctions about it, no hang-ups. I didn't care or know if he slept with other people. I didn't possess jealousy or longing where he was concerned. For the first and the last time in my life, I didn't equate a sexual relationship with love or the pursuit of partnership. Not that I didn't love Will in my way. We shared a rare kind of intimacy. We made gluten-free toast in his kitchen at 2 a.m., eating it, giggling in our underpants. I saw him through a fractured, dissociated breakdown in my apartment after a thunderously loud Lucinda Williams show, the only time I saw him approach behavior I might call aggressive, though all he did was yell. We wrote an article together once. He insisted I take the whole byline, though he had paced around my apartment feeding me lines like I were his secretary. No, wait, write this, write this. I watched him engage with the world as if he were doing everything for the first time. Trying out a job, losing a job, finding a new apartment, beginning a new project. Because Will's life had once shattered to pieces, he didn't care what it would take to make it presentable, defendable, normal. For me, every venture felt like an obligation, a step on a ladder that led somewhere I was supposed to want to go. With my anxiety and my stupid eating disorder, I spent all my time climbing and climbing and climbing. What was at the top? I don't think I knew. During my final summer in Northampton, Will and I made the ultimate intimate gesture. We shared a community garden plot. Recovery is not linear, and Will had gone from a relatively good period to a bad one. Months earlier, I thought he might be cured. He had moved into a bigger apartment and taken a job at a better bookstore. He'd gotten off welfare and started various community organizing projects. He had introduced me to some new friends. But when summer hit, back into the depths he went. He stopped calling, and when I stopped by, he'd answer the door with a faraway look on his face, like he wasn't sure who I was. In those periods, we saw one another, but he was not, it seemed, really there. My problems were less serious, but no less consuming. I had defended my master's thesis to very little fanfare or praise, and left my MFA program with a sense that I might have blown it. I had plumbed the depths of my anxiety in therapy, which made me jittery around my family and jittery by myself. And most of my friends had graduated and left the area. I was hanging around the Pioneer Valley only because I had been offered a teaching fellowship for fall. So when Will asked me to share the garden plot, I said yes before I really thought it through. We drove up to the allotment on a May evening to check it out. It was not lost on either of us that we stood in the shadow of Northampton State Hospital, the psychiatric facility that had operated until 1986. With broken windows, rusty fire escapes, and rumors of hauntings, its presence across the field of plots felt comical, sinister, and a little too apt. What do you think? Will asked of the dirt rectangle in front of us. A lone mullein plant held court in the center. In my imagination, the plot flourished with more colorful fruits. I could see neat rows of tomatoes and basil, maybe a cucumber. It's great, I'm excited. Me too. We must have hugged, though my memory is that we were awkward with each other that night. The summer is short in New England. Most gardeners take advantage of the brief season by planting in May, but we waited until the beginning of July to return to the garden. The mullein, ragged and graying, towered smack in the middle, the only living thing in that 6x9 desert. Coaxing a garden into shape in a month or two seemed like a real ambition. Around us, people happily tended their early peas, the first of the herbs, the tiny green orbs that would one day be edible tomatoes. But in our plot, we bickered. Will sat on the sidelines with his head in his hands while I turned over dirt with some sense that I had to rush and resent the work. Will couldn't do any shoveling or heavy lifting because he said he wasn't up to it that day, but he did not spare telling me what to do. I did not feel kind towards him and soon turned martyrish and annoyed, wielding the spade, grumbling inwardly about the ridiculous proposition. What the hell had we been thinking? And then I took the spade to the mullein. It had to be moved. The starts waited in their plastic pots to be planted in its place. Don't, Will cried. Please, don't kill it. It's right in the middle of everything, I said. I'm just going to move it so it's in a better place. Don't, Will said again. Please, "Come on," I hollered. "Don't be ridiculous. I want things to be neat. It's in the way." "If you kill it, I'm going to be really upset," he said. I thought he might cry. More carefully than I had planned, I uprooted the mullein and moved it to the corner of the plot. I replanted it, went for the communal hose, and gave it a long drink. When I came back from returning the hose, Will sat still in silence. I wanted him to leave, but I had driven him there and would drive him home. We were sharing a community garden plot at the top of a hill a mile outside of town, and only one of us owned a car. Finally, he lifted his head from his hands. "The schizophrenic and the obsessive-compulsive attempt to garden," he said wryly. I did not laugh. At the time. But I was not too far gone to see the humor. I had missed Will's wit and lightness. I had missed being able to laugh at myself. I wasn't sure what exactly I was mad about. The mullein had not needed moving. We could have worked around it. We could have worked around many things. We drove home in silence. "Bye," I said when I dropped him off. Several months later, I left Northampton and met the man who would become my husband. I have often thought about that comment Will made. He equated us that day, diagnosed us, put us on the same plane in the same handbook. At the time, I was angry and thought, "No way, you're the crazy one." But if I was honest with myself, I'd spent much of our friendship noticing the ways that he and I were, to my great surprise, not so different. I'd never known a schizophrenic before I met Will. I never knew someone with a diagnosis like that could play a video game, have sex, discuss politics, hold down a job, care about someone, hope. I know now that Will, despite the immense difficulty of his life, was one of the lucky ones. He overcame the worst parts of his illness. He was able to live with challenges in the same world I did. Before I met Will, I thought being crazy was a binary. You were or you weren't. But actually, Will and I were both at once, functional and dysfunctional, happy and sad, free and not free. We all live with this dichotomy. We are all at least a little bit crazy. The guy gardening in the plot across the way, staunchly pulling every last weed, maybe he heard voices too. The woman with the beautiful organic garden, the herbs spiral in the middle, the sweet peas stanchioned up by bamboo stakes, the lettuces scattered just so. Maybe she was a recovering alcoholic, bipolar, or just a little bit depressed. Or maybe, like me, she suffered from anxiety and spent her life trying desperately to hide it. It was enormously freeing to realize I didn't have to hide anymore, that the things that went on in my head probably went on in someone else's. We were not bad people. We were not so beyond the pale. We were all just working in the shadow of the insane asylum, tending our desires and fears, our neuroses, our sadness, the strange things our brains did to make us suffer. Will and I kept in touch. He left Northampton eventually a year or two after I did. I visited him in Portland, Oregon once with my husband and son. He started a nonprofit, got a master's degree, and now has a private therapy practice. He no longer believes in diagnoses like schizophrenia or anxiety. He's well known for the work he has done around the possibility of treating mental illness without medication and without those kinds of labels. He's still a pain to eat with. I know because he came to town recently and we met for breakfast. He brought a new partner and her 2 kids, and I brought my husband and son. He and I sat across from one another, and again, I felt like our friendship transcended expectation and normalcy. Will laughed his 10-year-old's laugh. I teased him for reminding the waiter 3 times that he didn't eat cow dairy. Our spouses chatted, our boys shared pancakes. It was awfully good to see him, and I thought that Will's decades earlier self wouldn't recognize the put-together man sitting across from me. I'm much happier than when I lived in Northampton. I'm still anxious, but I no longer have an eating disorder. My husband, thank God, is barely crazy and patient. I anxiously watch our son for signs of anxiety. The irony is not lost on me. Maybe, like me, he'll grow up to have anxiety, but of course, I hope he won't. And maybe someday I'll tell my son about the efficiency apartment and that strange first date with Will. I'll tell the story of the garden plot and that awful summer that ended with me harvesting 10 bags of basil by myself at sundown on a September evening in the shadow of a mullein that had survived its uprooting. Resenting Will, resenting being the one who thought she always had to manage things, I drove home to make pesto, and I'm sure left tomatoes dying on the vine because I never went back there, and I doubt Will did either. Thanks.
I forgot some of that stuff. We should talk later. Okay. Thank you so much. That was, when I read that, I was like, wow, okay. It's amazing for me to have everybody else hear that too. And yeah, so thank you. I would like to just go right to the next person, who is going to be, is Ilya around?
Yeah.
Ilya Parishki, are you ready to rock and roll? I would like the story of why we're here in this house traces to Ilya, and Ilya heard Madness Radio. He heard an interview with someone who you'll hear momentarily, and that person invited Ilya to the mental health conference that I was at. Ilya and I met each other, we became great friends, and now we are here together in Ilya's home. So we owe a tremendous round of applause to Ilya for making this event possible. I want to invite Ilya Parishki.
Hi, everyone. I'm very sad. I'm not here to see you, I'm here to see Dr. Bull. Hi, Dr. Bull. Dr. Bull, can you help me with my sad? He asked me why I'm sad. No one's ever asked me before. I'm sad because people are in pain all over the world. And there's not clean water for some people, but some people have a lot of it. And there's poverty. Like, people don't have enough stuff to even, like, make it through the day and be okay. But then some people live in mansions. Can you help me, Dr. Bull? He says he can help me. Thanks, Dr. Bull.
Side effects may include abnormal bleeding or bruising, abnormal thoughts, agitation, akathisia, anxiety, black and tarry stools, blisters, blood in stools, bloody vomit, blurred or changes in vision, burning or tingling in the hands, arms, feet, or legs, burping, changes in ability to taste food, changes in sexual desire or ability, chest pain, coma, confusion, constipation, cough, dark-colored urine, delusions, diarrhea, difficult, frequent, or painful urination, difficulty breathing or swallowing, difficulty concentrating, dizziness or faintness, drowsiness, dry mouth, emotional numbing, enlarged pupils, eye pain or redness, fast pounding or irregular heartbeat, fever, flu-like symptoms, flushing, gas or bloating, hallucinations, headache.
Dr. Ball, there was a bit of a problem. Take more? Okay. Okay. Take some more. Thanks, Dr. Ball. All right, we'll do it. Ooh. Thanks, Dr. Ball.
Heartburns, heart attack, hives, hoarseness, hostility, hot flashes or flushing, hypomania, impotence, increased appetite, increased sweating, indigestion, insomnia, itching, joint pain, loss of appetite, lump or tightness in throat, mania, memory lapses, mood swings, muscle weakness or tightness, nausea, nervousness, nightmares, numbness in your hands, feet, arms, or legs, pain in the back, muscles, joints, or anywhere in the body, pain in the upper right part of the stomach, painful erection that lasts for hours, painful or irregular menstruation, panic attacks, paranoia, problems with coordination, problems with teeth, psychotic episodes, rash, restlessness, ringing in the ears, runny nose.
Dr. Ball, the problem got worse. Take this other one too? Okay, you're the doctor. Orange ones. Okay, take this one. Thank you, Dr. Ball. Really appreciate everything that you're doing for me. And this one. Okay, take them together. This is gonna do it, I know it. Oh, that actually helped.
Seizures, sensitivity to light, sexual dysfunction, slower difficult speech, small purple spots on the skin, sneezing, sore throat, fever, chills, and other signs of infection, stomach pain, sudden muscle twitching or jerking that can't be controlled, sudden upset stomach, suicidal thoughts or behavior, swelling in the eyes, face, tongue, lips, throat, hands, arm, feet, ankles, or lower legs, swelling, itching, or burning, or infection in the vagina, tightness in hands and feet, twitching, uncontrollable shaking of a part of the body, unusual excitement, violent behavior, vomiting that looks like coffee grounds, weakness or numbness in an arm or leg, weakness or tiredness, weight gain, weight loss, weight withdrawal, death.
Dr. Ball? Uh-oh. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh. 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 Ooh. I'm sorry, Dr. Ball. Sorry, Dr. Ball. Bye, everyone.
They look like candy, but I think I'm going to pass on those, actually. And thank you, Juliet. Round of applause for Juliet. The Bay Area Mandala Project is a very important initiative that is going on. It is at its formative stages, looking for people, resources, connections, networking to get established more. We've heard a little bit from Dina, and I want to invite someone who is also very important with the Bay Area Mandala Project and who's been working in alternatives to psychosis treatment and alternatives to hospitalization for many, many years, longer probably than anyone in this room. I want to invite Mike Cornwall up to talk. So Mike, welcome.
I'm walking this way on purpose, not like you. Wow. Just want to take this in. been in a lot of rooms, but not one quite like this. Well, Will invited me to be on Madness Radio, and it was really so wonderful. As all of you know, let me just say quickly that I'm so grateful to Will and everyone here, Sasha, Jax, Oryx, all the young people who were, you know, I was in that anti-psychiatry movement back in the 70s and 80s, and when I heard about the Icarus Project and Oryx and everyone, Stephen, it was kind of a revelation to some of us older activists, that all you were doing all this. And so it was like a blessing, and Danny and everyone, to be able to get to know all of you. And Sasha, spent a lot of time together, and Adrian, of course. So it makes me feel less sad when I see all the other things going on. We don't need to list those, the forced treatment and Laura's Law and everything, but there's just so much hope too that it's contagious, and I think you're right, we're part of a movement that can't be stopped. Sasha's book, Jack's book, you know, all the Mad in America and everything. So when I was young, I just turned 70 a few days ago, and Sasha, 70 is the new 68. What a lame joke, but I made it up, so I'm going to tell it. But when I was about 50 years ago, I went through a real intense extreme state process and was able to go through it. At the time, at my aged grandmother's house, which it turns out was exactly what I needed. There was, you know, no diagnosis, nothing going on. I didn't see anyone. I was able to go through it for about a year. It was really rough, but I came out the other side, and so was fortunate in about 15 years later to be able to work in some of these places that used to be in the Bay Area, these sanctuaries where people could go through their experiences without meds in a loving milieu, like Soteria House with Janas here was part of that. And at the same time, there was one in San Francisco called Diabasis House that had a Jungian orientation, and then the one I was involved with was in Contra Costa County called I Ward, which is open for 8 years and had 20 beds, no restraints, no medication. We let people go through their process. And what emerged from that for me was really harken back to the time at my grandmother's house of not just the thing about not being on meds. I think when we can go through these things, if possible, without that, it can really be a lot deeper and more powerful. But being with people who are loving and receptive and caring and hold that for us, to me that's really the healing balm. And so I kind of hesitated to tell this, but I think I'm going to, because I've continued to be with people in extreme states now these years. And just yesterday I was with someone, a young person, I'd never met him before. And it always moves me when this person had been in the hospital several times, had even had ECT, and for the last several months was just roaming around in the house, not talking, almost mute, maybe 1 or 2 words. And somehow his parents found out that I could be available to talk to him. So Mom and Dad were there, and this young person, 20, and it just reminded me of even when I was 20, just being in that space with my grandmother, who wasn't asking me a bunch of questions or analyzing me, or all these other places, these sanctuaries, in the way so many of you bring yourself to these experiences. So for months, this person hadn't said more than maybe 1 word, and we just sat there together for about 30 minutes. And parents kind of wanted to interrupt and say things. I said, no, please just let us have this together, you know. And about 10 minutes into it, this person leans in and he goes, "What do you get off on?" I didn't tell him exactly. But the next appropriate thing was, I said, I love nature, I love the rivers, I love to get out and be around plants and everything. And so we started this kind of conversation that sometimes I would sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and not say anything when all this is going on. He's looking at me kind of, you know. And it went on like that for about 40 minutes. And then he stood up and said, "Bye." I said, "Bye, see you later." So I'm going to be seeing this person probably 3 or 4 times a week. And his mother then told me, she says, he hasn't said a complete sentence in several months. Now, how can that be? You know, we know how it can be, huh? We can get so isolated. And maybe the people, our most beloved people around us, aren't able to just be with us and not only listen, but let us be heard. What's it like when we're with someone where we can be heard? It's always tricky, because today the young person is up nude going around the house talking nonstop. Who knows what's next? Who knows how it'll turn out? But I just wanted to tell that story just because of the mystery of madness, or what we want to call it. And I was so grateful when you did that interview, because Will, you know, he's really uncannily intuitive. He knows right what to ask to help us speak. So in that little thing in the book of our interview, hope I get through this without crying. Probably not. It's about that sanctuary, and so I love that they have these big things that says, "We took all comers, no matter how violent, wild, suicidal, or out of control, because we believe unexpressed emotion is at the core of madness." So.
It's so moving for me to have you here and to have you on the show and in the book, Mike, because this is a movement, and it's also a historical movement that has been many generations in the past, that's continuing into the future. We're going to have one more speaker, then we're going to have a short break, and then we're going to have Bonfire Madigan. I want to invite Stephen Morgan up. All right.
Okay. So I did my schoolboy thing and wrote a poem. So what is the opposite of madness? Does anyone know? Anybody? Anything that's better? Bernie fucking Sanders. That's not. Okay.
Are you feeling the burn?
I'm feeling the burn. So what is the opposite of madness? Footnote. Not the codified madness on page 237 that some white guys made up, but the real common madness of not belonging. A shell, weathered smooth, treasure to children, humming breath of oceans if you listen. Baked in sunshine, washed cool by lapping waves, foot scraper, house of pearls, of water tattooed. No intellectual exercise. The opposite of madness is slither, woodpeck, bloom, sex. A purposeful forgetting of all the little lies that make us less animal. Truer than authenticity, nobler than responsibility, louder than voice. The opposite of madness is unimpeded movement and naked public view. A cessation of lack. how to dance in this mall of stop signs. Find another, find another. And thank you, Will, for inviting me 8 years ago in the middle of Vermont. I hope you welcome me into this larger movement.
Thank you. There's many, many more contributors, and I'm very, very excited to have you here. What I'd like to do is have a break, and let's break.
than we had said, and it means a lot to me that you're still here with me and with us. And this is an incredible reunion for me. In the room right now are some of the people who, when I went from kind of being just indie rocker, thinking I was on my way, I just wanted to be, probably couldn't say it out loud at the time, but you know, maybe I wanted to be like an indie rock star on the Kill Rock Stars world, right? But Kill Rock Stars, right? And that didn't go the way I thought, and some of my peers and pals making music that's probably very meaningful to you all, and one of those people was even name-checked here today, somebody I loved to perform with and share a stage with, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it out of our indie rock star world. I mean, people said he made it. He was in a white suit at the Oscars, right? Looking like he came just an astronaut from outer space. Isn't it the Oscars today? Well, that wasn't where he wanted to be, right? And Elliot Smith, he didn't make it. He didn't make it to go forward with all of us. But you know what? It taught me that there's not one way to go, or success sure doesn't have to look like that for most of us. And in fact, that idea of one person's success reaching a pinnacle like that, well, it destroyed this person close to me. And I knew then that intergenerational collective liberation was my calling. It's what I was supposed to be a part of, movement building. And around that same time, I read an article like Jax did and other people. I was doing peer advocacy for the Mental Health Association of San Francisco at the time, and when I read Sasha's article, 2002, on the cover of the Bay Guardian, I thought, I'm gonna create a new language with this guy and these people. He came out of the punk rock movement like I did, and I knew about Choking Victim and the bands that were happening. And I was advocating with Delphine Brody, who had come from St. James Infirmary, and Delphine taught me so much about what radical community is about. And if anybody could break down, hey, what we're really talking about here is access to self-care, community supports, you know, these corporate nonprofits who are lining their pockets with monies, doing more research, more blah, blah. This is not movement building. This is not helping the people who need it most. And at that same time, I met Leroy Moore. Leroy Moore is my mentor. He's my brother. He was doing disability advocates for minorities at the time. He's gone on to create Crip Hop, Sin's Invalid, Poor Magazine, and he has a new book out called Black Cripple Delivered Poetry and Lyrics. Yeah! And from Leroy, I learned this language of diverse ability, right? And that our abilities and the multiplicity of those is where our power is, and it is in our differences and in respecting and celebrating those and finding our commonality, that we can really have a sustainable way to move forward and plant new ground. And I don't know about you all, but I'm here just totally interested in overthrowing the whole dominant paradigm. And I think we're entitled to our utopian ideals, right? And we can live those together in meaningful ways, and we break down the binary language that divides us. So I'm really honored because it's actually my outsider story that is the first chapter in Outside Mental Health. And I want to just say something briefly because like Elliot, my mom is another one who had extraordinary gifts and couldn't find a way, couldn't find the community to share those gifts with. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to overthrow this racist, imperialist, colonial capitalism, is a true gift economy, is unilaterally giving with no expectation actually of getting anything back. And I think just let that land on you for a moment. Where is your radical, nurturing mother? Where is she in you? All of your genders, all of yourselves. Listen to her right now, because she unilaterally gave to you in the womb and coming into this world. She expected nothing back from you. That's the gift economy. That's the economy that takes language and goes from the human being to the human doing. No, human giving. Homo donos, yeah? Human givers. That's who we are. That's who I'm in a room with. There's so many movement builders in this room, movers and shakers who are creating new ground fruitful and rich, nutrient-rich ground for our souls to be born into this interdependence, huh? So my mom, I think she didn't realize what of a radical she actually was, because she really just let me be a wild child. And when she raised me, when I was really, really little, it was just me and her in a teepee in the Okanogans. We lived right at the edge of the National Forest in indigenous grounds, and there was this whole cast of back to the land runaway spirits. And I was about the age that my daughter is now, 2.5, 3 years old, and I would just walk at dawn with a pony, a wild trail horse that a person called Horsewoman had gifted to me. And I would get up on Co-Pony and just go down to the breakfast cabin, probably a good 1/4 of a mile away. No adults around, nobody awake. Just the sunrise, the sound of a new day, and that trust and that fierce, interdependent knowing that we're exactly where we are, doing exactly what we should. And that total faith that we're in this together. And even if Co-Pony took me off the trail or whatnot, some animals, some people, some moment would catch me and bring me back. And that sort of otherworldly sense is what called me into mothering and also took me out of the country. And now I'm a mom. And actually I'm very proud of myself, because I feel like I've created a little sanctuary in my life where actually Will got to come across the border and finish this book in my house with my kids running around as he wrote the afterword. And it made me feel like my trust in community was really there, that we really are the net that we wave together, which is some of the facilitator language I brought to Icarus. Some of the great doings and undoings, and our many selves are here. So I was thinking to read a little bit from this, but I'm just going to go ahead with music and just invite you, implore you all to just have a journey with this and get one for somebody you love, and really think about every day how you can feed less the corporate machine,
Yes.
feed more the radical community that is doing this already, you know. And I thank you, those of you who are growing food and growing ideas and giving shelter and giving your heart, because that's what we need. We said it today: clean water, air we can share, food with nutritional value to feed each other, the laying of hands without any expectation of what they bring back to me, because they're there just with love. So I'm here laying these hands on this wooden instrument that saved my life. I was told that I would never be a great cellist, and I decided I didn't need to be a great cellist. I needed to be honestly laying my hands in love right here. And whatever needed to come out was going to come out. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to keep doing. And that's what's kept me out of jails and psych wards. That's what's kept me from sleeping, not having to sleep on the streets, at least not for very long. And I thank you. There's some of you in the room right now who know how deeply hard it is for me to ask for anything. I was really, really crippled by that. Not showing your emotions, corporate capitalistic culture, colonial settler culture that said you had to be self-sufficient, have everything you need, and if you didn't, there's something wrong with you. Deeply, deeply ingrained in my upbringing and family dynamic. So there's a lot of you in this room today who gave me, and still continue to give me, permission and inspiration to say, I need you. I can't do this. I can make it through, but I can't do it alone. I don't want to be alone. So my mom died when she was 37. And when I turned 37, I wasn't sure how I was going to keep going. But I knew it was because of this mad movement that I would. Because I had heard a voice telling me that they needed me to be their doorway. That they needed to come from the infinite to the finite, and one day we'd all return to the infinite again. But would I be the doorway? And I could see this number 37, and I couldn't see the face of a woman that looked like mine getting any older past them. And I knew if I was a doorway, at least I had to stay that much longer. So my daughter was born when I was 37. And her brother had called to me in Chiapas, in the indigenous lands, in the EZLN reclaimed lands. And both Will and another amazing contributor to the book, Miguel, were there with me. And I told them that the voice of a child was looking for me, and there in Chiapas had said, "Papa, here's my dad." And they believed me. They totally believed me. Well, okay, I didn't tell Will till later, but but Will looked right at me, not knowing what was going on in my mind and in my spirit other world, and said, "You're in love. You look like you're in love." Less than 24 hours of meeting the person that the ancestors told me was supposed to be the father of my child. Well, regardless to say, now me and this person have two beautiful Mexican-US children that we're pushing all borders. We're a nationless family in the liminal zones. And that's why it's extra extraordinary to me that Will brought the Madness Radio book to Tijuana, to the borderlands, and finished it there. It was like full homecoming, right? Because that year was also when we did the Mad Gibbs tour, right? And we took these ideas and what really would become the heart of this work around. So, and that's what we're continuing to do. So this was the melody that was playing in my head. This sort of Irish children's song set to some Pan-Asian indigenous orchestra. left behind. Light your candle one, the one you saw the time. Light your candle four, the one you left behind. Light your candle for you with you all the time. Be not afraid of what you may become. Be not afraid, child, you're many. We are many. Yes, we are many. Into us. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to hear myself, but you're hearing me okay, right?
Hell yeah.
Great.
You sound great.
Thank you. I wanted to tell you a beautiful moment on that trip that changed my life forever. Will was interviewing some of the Zapatista women who ran the clinic there, you know. I was very, very inspired by this movement, and I still am. And Will had the Madness Radio recorder, and he asked some of the women in the clinic there in the autonomous Zapatista zones, what do you do for folks who are experiencing extreme states, who are in a place where they can't contribute in ways that other folks are able to in the moment to the community, So he's asking them, what do you do for folks who are in what we call psychosis? And I was standing right there, and my Spanish is really spotty, but I'll never forget, she just right away looked at him and said, we let them rest. We create space for their healing and their insight. We create room for them to look in, to be safe. We make a soup. We use these herbs. We remind them of the gifts that they bring to their community, what we love from them that they bring when they are able to, and we just create a healing space until they're ready to contribute those gifts again. Doesn't sound so complicated, does it? Doesn't sound like any police are involved, right? She'll meet you in the morning light. Come sit
secrets. The wind is waiting, waiting, scream. Your secrets, they've come to bring you. Come to bring you. Come to bring us, come to bring you. Come. Scream your secrets. The wind is waiting, waiting, scream. Your secrets have come to bring you. Come to bring us, come to bring you home. And I wanted you to see what could become of me. Why couldn't you have stayed to see what may become of me? Oh, I wanted you to see what has become of me. Oh, why couldn't you have stayed to see me? Come ask her why nobody asked her. Come ask her why nobody asked her. Come and ask her and ask and ask. And ask and ask. And ask and ask. And listen and listen. Deeply listen. And have no answer that doesn't need an answer. There is no fucking answer. Ask and ask. Listen and ask. DIY, now DIT community that we've harvested and are together. This DIY has got to become, it's become this DIT, let's do it together, right? I'm so, no more DIY. I'm not a DIY artist. I'm a DIT artist. Do it together. And I feel, I know this is true because part of literally how I survive financially in the world is just little niches, enough people who really feel this and know we're into together, and they just go to my PayPal donation button, they give me a little something. And I moved myself out of the country where the overhead is not insane and I'm not in this litigation culture all the time. And the little bit that the people who feel the healing capacity of this give back to me literally is how I pay my bills and keep a roof over my kid's head and trade organic, locally grown food, and I don't go to any food bowl. Okay, if you all do good for you and stuff, but I'm getting off that grid. And that's been my answer. I'm trying to get more and more off the grid and into my soul heart. And bless you all who are doing that and able to. And I don't want to sign up some Patreon system, whatever. I'm not into that, at least not right now. I want to shift it for the people. Not some app somewhere that I'm giving like 15% to, I don't know. Somebody doesn't need it from me, that's for sure. But out of that, I feel really blessed that these theater people have seen what I do, and now I'm in certain theater channels, I've become a bit of an adjective, and I want that to grow. So that's my aspiration, is to be an adjective. And I'm going to give you some Madiganisms that have been used now in large-scale theater productions. And this was a piece that I was commissioned to start to work on. And I used it to open a show at the ACT. I don't know if some of you might have seen it. Yeah. And the wonderful thing is that I own all my work, I own all my licenses, so I get to do whatever I want with it. And I give it to you all freely to do whatever you want with it, really. Let it heal you, explore and explode you. So I'm going to do a piece that comes out of all that. And it's the soundtrack to the movie that is our collective life right now. Yay! It was the soundtrack to this moment, and I call this Falling is Flying. Yay! Yeah. All right, how's it go? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you again so much for being here. So I'll do this last one, Journey song. Again, thank you so much for being here. I think it's okay if we have a kind of soiree afterwards, talk to each other, meet somebody you don't know, ask them about what they're up to, because there's like so much amazing folks in this room, just really ripping the fabric of how we think the world should be open, and there's the ideas, are all here. So talk to somebody about them. And yeah, please, I brought vinyl records, limited edition clear vinyl. There's not that many of them left. They're all hand numbered and signed. So almost everything out there's like $10. That's like really, hopefully not that much to support right now. The book is 12, so that's not that much more. And I hope you buy some for your loved ones, and probably will sign it. Huh? There he is. Yeah. Yeah, he'll probably sign it. He doesn't have to, but he probably will. And right, Leroy, you'd sign your book, right? Okay. Yeah? Okay. And I have some CDs here. I know, I know nobody's really playing CDs anymore, but you're welcome to get one. Yeah, you have CDs? Great. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm gonna do this last piece. Usually I like to do the piece that I started with last, but I didn't do that tonight. That's the vinyl as the lady saves the dragon from the evil prince. But I started everything off with that because I needed to kick off my energy and be with you all. So I want to end with this piece, and it's called Portrait of the Artist as a Transliminal Criminal. As I think about going back to my liminal zone home. I love back in the day of the Icarus chat threads when I was all up in there. Even though I wasn't that sharing my story there, because I've been always doing that in different ways, but I was often posting about all kinds of stuff. And I remember I saw somebody who was they were the liminal kid, and up on that, and I was like, that's me! You know how you start. Icarus has always been amazing for that. Like, you find your other. Soy otro tú, tú eres otro yo, right? You're another me, I'm another you. And the liminal zones, when I heard that language, I was like, okay, here's my people. And yeah, that's why like Jax talks about in-between lands, right? That feels like home. So this is an ode to all that. Transliminal criminal. And actually a little movie was made about this song, and you can go watch it. Actually, we recorded some of it at the Germantown farm, yeah? Some goats appear from our other life there, yeah? There they are. And actually, I think we called it an exploration of gender non-conforming, gender exploration, gender non-binary explorations, and altered states of consciousness, all this. That was in our, and we used the fork in the road, right? The literal fork in the road. Okay. We used to do a lot of Icarus organizing where there was literally a giant, 30-foot fork in the road. It was like an installation somebody had put. Okay. Yeah, that's where I'm supposed to be. Just put my tent right there. Okay. So, thank you all so much. I was in Bellingham and Danny showed up at the show. Where are you, Danny? There. Oh, Danny. Thank you so much for being there that night. Robin Williams had just died, I remember. I was really, really depicted by that, as I'm sure a lot of us were, right? His life and his death. And I, for one, am really grateful. I see suicide as a human rights issue when we live in the kind of world we do. And I just started, I remember you were there, and I just started saying,